So hey guys, today I'm going to explain to you guys why Memento I would not consider being one of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Just in general. So we're going to essentially break down the deck. So as I've discussed in another video, well, if we just look at purely the Memento support, so we're not going to include the Goblin support to this yet, right? What the new support does, it's not very additive to what the Memento cards already did, right? Well, I mean, it is like literally just additive in the sense that you're just slapping extra stuff onto what they already did before. In terms of what they do now and what they did before, it's not too far off. It's about the same, right? So before we have like Horn Dragon, we have Mace, Goblin. Now we have Akirin, but we wouldn't have Akirin before. One of Gaddock, and then we have three of these guys, three of these guys, three of these guys, three of these, three of these, one of these bad boys, one of these bad boys. And yeah, this looks about right. So now that you have this, well, what changes with the new support? This, and we throw this in. And that's about it. Now, what does this change in regards to then board? Well, not much, honestly. It's still like a couple of interruptions. That's it. You know, we have Snatch Steal effect with Combined Creation. I guess now, if we pop our Creation King here, we could technically bring back a Horn Dragon if it's in the graveyard. Kind of situational, but you know, we can do that. And then we have Bone Party to pop Horn Dragon to then add whatever. We could add Goblin, Mace, Mace for Snatch Steal. Goblin is kind of useless, honestly, in my opinion. Targeting protection, not that useful. We could special summon Anguish to grab Mace. We could do search a guy for follow-up. We could also do technically Dark Blade to pop a back row. Make Guardian Chimera with Memento Lin Fusion. And you know, it's just moderate amount of just interruptions. But okay, what if we drop Raigeki against the board? Well then. Yeah, Raigeki? Yeah, it kind of destroys the board regardless, right? Evenly. Same kind of deal. Nothing really changes in those regards. So, yeah. Very weak to just board breakers in general. The board breaker you'd be okay against are essentially just negate ones. If we're talking about removing cards, well, simply put, sad face. And also, entrap resistance, free support. Well, this support changes nothing. The Goblin support helps a little bit with being essentially kind of a second Bone Party, but you know, for consistency reasons, you'll probably also want to be playing second Goblin, which is technically kind of fine because Goblin is technically also a one-card starter, so not even the worst thing in the world. But all right, if we look inherently at what the deck does, well, here's an issue. So we'll just go through it. So Memento Lin Bone Party, this effect and this effect, essentially this whole card, is completely garbage and useless if you do not open a Memento card. And specifically has to be a Memento monster. So yeah, that'll suck. And of course, there are really terrible Memento monsters here as well. So in this case, we'll have Akihirin, Horn Dragon, and Combined Creation. If we have any of these guys, well, yeah, we really need the Bone Party to resolve them. And also, Ash Blossom Joy Spring negates Bone Party and also the effect of your Goblin Quick Play here, which I don't have here, but yeah, just pretend it's here. If that gets negated by Ash, it doesn't protect you from anything at all. So, with how Tribute for Cost works, it's just not very good with Memento. Yeah. The only time it's good is with specifically Anguish and no one else. So, let's just go through a quick example of you just getting completely cooked, I guess. So if we have Imperm, chain 1 Imperm, or not chain 1, chain 2 Imperm, target Anguish versus Anguish to search, right? Then we have the Goblin Quick Play, or I guess the Bone Party. Both would be pretty much the same. So where is it? Let's see. Grand Breakout. So if we were to then chain Goblin Biker Grand Breakout and it gets ashed, we'll at least resolve the Anguish effect to search. But consider this now as a 2-card combo. Is there a single good card I could possibly search at this point? Well, surprisingly, with the support in this exact situation, the answer is yes. Because then we can go Tatsu no Toshigo effect to send Gaddock plus Sleepy, and now you have this exactly one follow-up play where we can do Gaddock to add back Sleepy, and because, you know, Tatsu here destroyed itself, we can then do Sleepy effect to then bring out the Twin Dragon. Now, the question is, what do we do with the Twin Dragon afterwards? Twin Dragon can search 2 cards. Are there any useful 2 cards we can search? So we have to search specifically monsters. So, can we put up anything? We can search follow-up for next turn. That's about it, right? We have the Reborn effect of Twin Dragon. Is there anything worth reborning? Well, if we reborn Anguish, we don't have targets for Anguish to reborn. So, nope. It doesn't really do anything here. Okay, then. Gaddock effect, we would have already resolved. So, yeah, not really doing much for us. We can't really search any of our Memento spell traps from this position, so... Yeah, I mean, that the new support, it allowed us to search follow-up for turn 3 if we managed to live. Epic. I guess in this case, you would probably reborn Sleepy and then just pass, because if it gets destroyed by battle or card effect, we can send a Memento card from our deck to the graveyard, which at least could get a Garnet out of our deck. Very, very epic indeed. So, yeah, that's what would happen, I guess. If theoretically we were able to resolve Goblin Biker Grand Breakout here. But okay, now let's assume we're not able to. So we're going to, instead of going with Anguish, we'll be going with Darkblade for the rest of the examples. So it doesn't really matter which one we go with, as you can see now, but we'll go with Darkblade for simplicity. So normal summon Darkblade. Darkblade pretty much has to be normal summoned unless you special summon it off of Bone Party, which would require you to have another Memento in hand. But alright, we'll go with normal summon Darkblade now. If we normal summon Darkblade, and our opponent drops like Imperm on this, and then we chain Bone Party. So what we're doing with the Bone Party here essentially is we do need to destroy with how the Memento cards work. We do need to actually destroy a card to resolve it. So, Darkblade, if it's not on the field and you have no Memento monster to destroy, right? Yeah, it says Memento monster specifically. If we have no Memento monster to destroy, Memento Darkblade will simply not resolve. And do absolutely nothing, it will fizzle. So, if we were to resolve Goblin Biker, well, not resolve Goblin Biker Grand Breakout, but Darkblade effect is able to resolve, it will do nothing. So, that's an issue with if we get hit by Imperm plus Ash. And then Imperm plus Ash, same thing with the Bone Party. It just won't really end up resolving that well. And everything kind of sucks. So if we get, you know, Impermed here, Ashed on here, neither effect resolves. So if we get hit by 2 hand traps, we're not looking at a good time. And we could technically also get hit by Effect Failure. And then Ash Blossom on here. So essentially, what I'm getting at here is, you know, this only dodges targeted effects essentially. So it does like not much for you, honestly. So if we were to then just get hit by Ash Blossom or things that respond directly like Gamma, we're not having a good time. So an even worse sequence that you could technically consider is if you were to then normal summon Anguish, get Gamma on this, and then get ashed on either this or this, and you're resolving essentially still nothing. And in this sense, you're technically a little bit worse than, for example, a Blue Eyes, because with the effect of, I guess, like wishes, maiden, all of that stuff, it has, well, it's a little bit better. So if we just do maiden, you still have true light to set wishes on a later turn to guarantee you have some sort of play, and you might be able to also do, well, just resolve the maiden in general, because a generic hand trap like Imperm or Ash Blossom doesn't really work well against like the true light in the long term, as well as it works against like Memento here. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention Memento Infusion, because Fusion here is kind of just a garbage card. It's always kind of been a little bit garbage. So if we look at the Memento cards here, if we want to resolve Fusion in general, like we need 2 Memento cards plus the Fusion, right? And that might sound obvious, but this means we need to open 3 engine cards, and they need to be specifically 3 engine cards, right? So, I mean, worst mementos you could open with this would be like Akirin plus Combine Creation. And then, yeah, I don't know if you even have follow-up from this. Wait, let's check. Send these 2. Effect, Twin Dragon, Reborn. No, wait, yeah, you're fine because you get to search a normal summon. But still, actually terrible because, you know, in this case, you die to an Ash on the Twin Dragon pretty hard, I believe, right? Do you? No, you have the follow-up play of at least grabbing Bone Party and popping the Horn Dragon that you get to reborn here, right? Yeah, so even like pretty worst case scenario, you have something. I'm not even going to bother checking what you end on off of this. I don't even want to know, but that's a 3 card, essentially. So what if I open just 1 Memento plus a Fusion then? It does legitimately nothing. So let's go with normal summon Anguish. You get Impermed, you have Fusion in hand. Yeah, nothing you can really do here. I suppose if you have some hand traps, you could potentially make a Guardian Chimera, but Guardian Chimera doesn't really do anything. So if we have like a Dark Blade and then we just randomly make a Guardian Chimera, you know, as we discussed before, Dark Blade needs to pop a Memento to special summon a Memento, so that you no longer have a Memento. So even though you dodge the Imperm, your effect doesn't resolve, so that doesn't really do much for you in that case either. When the Fusion really does pop off is when you're able to actually resolve at least a Memento effect, which if your opponent just shotguns some interruption, you're not going to be able to do. So for example, if we were to do normal summon Anguish, our opponent just drops Ash Blossom Joe Spring, well, Fusion, not going to really work out here. If you're able to resolve, of course, a Memento effect, so in this case, it could be Dark Blade, it could be Horse over here, then you could Memento Infusion or Twin Dragon or the Creation King here. And you can make some plays. It depends on exact situation, I suppose, but you have something there. And this is just considering the deck going first, which, of course, you know, if we were against like Apollosa, you're not resolving anything. And you don't have the ability to really chain block efficiently either. So yeah, you would get, yeah, you would just get like completely bent over backwards. Yeah, no, not great. So okay, if we were to then try looking at all these combinations of cards, so the first thing you have going for you, I guess, is that your consistency with all of your 1 cards. Like all these monsters are pretty much 1 cards, except for certain ones with garnets here. So in terms of garnets, though, we'll go over that. So Mace, this is actually terrible to open because this is actually not a 1 card starter. So not a starter, 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 not a starter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 garnets, more or less. Well, potential garnets, right? All of these cards can be potentially completely dead. And then we also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. completely dead cards. And then Goblin Biker Grand Breakout is actually a little bit better because this can tribute any monster. So if we were to, like, I'm not saying this is like great, but you technically have the option of normal summon like Maxi, Ash Blossom Dress Spring, or any hand trap, and then converting this into a Memento Link Goblin. And then this would be essentially combo because Goblin is a one card starter. So that would work technically. But with, for example, Bone Party, no Memento Monster, completely dead, cannot resolve. Memento Miklon, this is something you want to be searching. If you open it, it's not like the end of the world, but if you don't have any Memento Monsters, this card really does nothing. And of course, these three, they also do nothing in hand, all garnets. Gaddock is actually pretty terrible to open. It's not like unplayable, but this is one of the worst cards I believe you can open. I think it's actually better to open either a Horn Dragon, Combined Creation, or Akihiran because of how you want Gaddock to resolve in general. With that being with usually I like to see this resolve with like a Goblin, or I suppose the Creation King would also be fine, where we're sending Gaddock alongside something we want to add back to the hand. But if we have to, we can also technically reborn Gaddock, I guess, and then make Sprite Elf with it. And there are a few ways we would have to reborn the Gaddock, I suppose. So we have reborn Gaddock with Memento Miklon. We also have reborn Gaddock with the Twin Dragon. And then that's about it, because this needs to be sent to the graveyard by a Memento Monsters effect. We would have to do like Twin Dragon popping Gaddock. So how the sequence works is I believe we would be using Memento Fusion to summon the Twin Dragon, and then we would need to Twin Dragon pop Gaddock in hand, reborn Gaddock, but do not use the effect to search. Then we make Sprite Elf, and then summon Gaddock later, and then have Gaddock add back a card from the graveyard, right? And that's just a bit terrible because, you know, that adds like more choke points for our opponent to randomly hit to an extent, kinda, if that makes sense. But yeah, definitely not my favorite sequence. And in some hands, I think like if we open Goblin plus Gaddock, it's kind of unplayable. So for example, with this horse line that you kind of had before, where we would send Gaddock and Sleepy, we can't really send this from deck to the graveyard if it's in the hand. So not much we can really send that's useful in this case, right? And the one card combo for this, I believe, does require you to send Gaddock. So if you open Gaddock plus the horse, this actually makes the horse not a one card starter anymore. So yeah, that's terrible. But yeah, this is considering if you aren't running like Cranium Burst or Fracture Dance as well, just worth mentioning. But you know, that adds a little bit more inconsistency. It's not like that much, you know, it's at 10% to open Cranium Burst if we throw that in as a one-of. So really not a big deal if it's just sitting in our deck somewhere. But alright. Now that we've looked at essentially going first, well, I guess worth mentioning is, well, while we're here, if you're dealing with Imperm, what are the odds of your opponent also having Ash Blossom Dress Spring? It's about 30%. So, yeah. About 1/3 of the time, your Bone Party or Goblin Biker Grand Breakout will just not be able to resolve, and your first effect will not be able to resolve either. Just thought that was worth mentioning because, you know, Ash Blossom Dress Spring is indeed at a 30% play rate. Or not 30% play rate, 90% play rate, my bad. Like, what was it, 95% or something? Ah, right. So 95% of decks will have a 30% chance to be able to negate your Grand Breakout or your Bone Party. And right now, Blue Eyes is actually a deck that is being played a lot. Like, I'm not saying Blue Eyes is good, but since it's being played a lot, worth mentioning. That deck, I believe, probably plays 2 or 3 of Purge. So, what are the odds of your opponent having either Ash Blossom or Purge? Well, correct answer. About 50 to 60%. So, about essentially, if we're going to assume we're playing against Blue Eyes and we're playing we're going first against them, you're essentially flipping a coin if your Goblin Biker Grand Breakout resolves or not, and they're also playing Effect Failure and Imperm, right? So, you get Impermed. You have the Bone Party, which is about a 50 or 60% chance, which means your opponent has an equally likely chance, as likely as you are to open Bone Party or the Goblin Biker Grand Breakout, to be able to negate it. So yeah, you might as well essentially flip a coin to win the coin flip, and then you have to win another coin flip to be able to resolve maybe your Goblin Biker Grand Breakout. But essentially, half of the time, if we're against like Blue Eyes, we can just expect this to not resolve at all, and both of our effects to just die essentially, right? And would have no further follow up, because if we do Anguish, this gets imperm, and Bone Party, this also gets negated. We would need more or less exactly Goblin Biker Grand Breakout to extend our plays, or I guess Memento Lin Tatsuno to Chigo in hand. If you have one of these, I guess, 6 cards, you can extend, essentially. Fusion doesn't work. So, Fusion plus Bone Party, terrible combination to open. Also, Goblin Biker Grand Breakout, bad with Fusion as well, because, if this doesn't resolve and this doesn't resolve, this will definitely not resolve. So, yeah. Essentially, the more you look at this deck, there are actually a bunch of hidden anti-synergies and bad positioning for this deck, just in general, like all over the place. So, kind of terrible in that regard. Maybe if you were a TCG player, you don't have to deal with like Ash Blossom at least, because you don't have to deal with Maxi as much, and also you have one copy of Called By, and the deck in general is okay against both Charmies. You only give up, I believe it was like one draw. It was like either an Upstart or a Pot of Greed to set up a reasonable-ish end board. So maybe it's better in TCG land, and I don't want to hear anything else about TCG. Like, honestly, like, I don't care about it. Insert deck that I'm talking about in Master Duel in TCG. Like, come on. But all right. In general, though, Memento is going to be incredibly mid, because all of your starters, you don't really have extenders that work without the, well, you don't have like a starter and an extender. These are purely just starters, right? So if I were to open a hand with, for example, now we're going to change it up. We have Anguish plus Darkblade, or just any like other one of our starters here, aside from Tatsu. None of these will be additive onto each other. So if I open Gaddock plus Anguish, the Gaddock, I mean, it will translate into an extra body later, but if I get hand trapped at any point, this isn't going to do anything. But essentially what you do, though, is you have Twin Dragon popping the card in hand, and then you get the Twin Dragon on the field, and then you can pop this with the Fusion. And then this essentially gives you one additional body to, like, link summon off later. Yeah, that's about it, really. That's what an extra Memento monster does in hand. So that's acceptable, I guess. Not like insanely useful or anything, but it can get the job done, I suppose. Well, all right. So after this, we have to consider: are we good into board breakers? No. Are we super good against hand traps? Sometimes. It really depends, because what if our opponent just has multiple interactions that respond directly to our monster effects? Well, at worst, we could be looking at something like a Gamma and then a Herald of Orange Light resolving. And then, these are only really useful if we dodge Imperm, right? And then with how these cards work, I think they're just worse than Fire King just in general. So we're not talking about like Fire King Snake Eye or Fire King Fiendsmith or whatever Fire King deck we're going to be looking at, but alright. If we are to be resolving the Kirin here, Kirin is going to trigger the graveyard effect of whatever arcing we're popping here. So we're going to assume it doesn't really matter which one. It could be normal summon Ponix, activate Ponix effect, or we have normal summon Volcanics. You can't respond to Kirin. So this already makes like the Bone Party and Grand Breakout much worse. So by you can't respond, I mean you can't Ash Kirin to stop the Kirin effect here, right? And this also allows effect 1 to resolve, and effect 2 will also resolve, right? So there's worlds of difference between Kirin Ponix and also Sharvara plus one of your attempting to resolve Unchained cards, because you can't really respond to negate these guys, not generically at least, right? So we can't purge these guys, we can't imperm these guys, we can't ash these guys. So in general, they're already going to end up being better than Memento by a little bit, and it's pretty significant if you think about Purge plus Ash Blossom. They don't have to take that 50-50 that Memento has to take, right? So in those regards, we're worse. And also, our starters are not also extenders, so you know they can end up as an extra body, like overall giving us an additional body for uh, the context of, I guess it would be like the end board, or making like Fiendsmith combo if you couldn't already. I think you can already, but yeah, one additional body that we can link off later. That's what opening Darkblade plus Anguish achieves. And then with Sleepy, this also isn't really an extender if our cards get negated early on. It does a whole lot of nothing. So yeah, Memento, pretty bad consistency wise. Like it's good in the sense that you can consistently get starters, but resolving starters, I'm not sure about the consistency on that. That's a little bit more shady. And then of course going second. Well, but if you throw in the new support, you actually have less slots for non-engine. So that kind of actually low-key makes your going second a little bit worse, because your engine is just terrible going second. So if we look at Goblin Biker Grand Breakout, yeah, resolving this is only good against targeted effects. So, here's a problem, a little bit of a predicament, if you will. What if my opponent has non-targeting removal? Uh-oh. Non-targeting removal. Well, let's go with this. Uh-oh, Spaghettio, it's a Mirror Jade. Okay, so Mirror Jade. It does not destroy, so we can't resolve like a fusion or a Memento card of any kind against Mirror Jade, pretty much. So resolve Mirror Jade effect, banish a guy non-targeting. So we'll go maybe Chain Link 1, Memento Lin Darkblade, attempt to resolve. Chain Link 2, Bone Party, or we can Chain Link 2, Grand Breakout, doesn't matter. The Goblin or whatever you're summoning off of this, going to be banished. With Chain 2, Mirror Jade. And then with your Darkblade here, this is just not going to resolve. And then this, it will resolve, but it will end up doing essentially nothing. So yeah, that's how that goes. And same thing would apply with DP. And actually, you know what? Darkblade, did I forget to mention? This guy is an ignition. Anguish, ignition. Tatsu no Tushigo, ignition. None of these guys are triggers. Why does this matter? Let's say we just have a bunch of generic removal. All right then. Normal summon Darkblade. I will immediately try to remove Darkblade. Now, if you do Bone Party, sure, resolve it. I have another form of removal. Okay, then I just use removal on whatever you just summoned. So, doesn't really matter what it is at this point, right? You have no normal summon, so the only thing you could possibly try to do is maybe resolve generously a fusion, maybe Goblin Biker Grand Breakout. And then what was this going to summon? Either a Twin Dragon or Tekutlika Creation King. Issue with summoning Creation King. You can only use one of these effects at a time. So right here, you cannot activate the following effects of Memento Mikla and Tekutlika Creation King in the same chain. So you summon this guy, you're not getting the Foolish Burial and the Destroy effect at the same time. You're going to more or less have to pick one if I have removal. If I removal, I'll just remove your Creation King. enchain to this effect, easy. If you were to just do this effect, uh, I can just potentially take it, or I can just remove your Creation King. It depends, really. But yeah, not a big deal. And, with specifically, I guess, branded, I don't think you're getting this far anyways, because the only way to make the Creation King reasonably is, if you have fusion. If you have just the Sleepy, just performing removal on Sleepy can already net you not enough bodies to make anything. And let's see, using monsters from your hand or field to make a Memento fusion monster. And it does not have to include Sleepy, but you do need the appropriate bodies in your hand and field. So if I see that you have one card in hand, when you're resolving Sleepy, I can just remove Sleepy, destroy Sleepy, not a big deal. And then you have absolutely nothing you can do afterwards. And then, that's not even considering Appaloosa yet, because, no, normal summon Anguish. Do I care about Anguish effect, actually? What was Anguish able to add? Probably something. Guess we can negate Anguish, negate Twin Dragon, and then you probably won't be able to get into Creation King unless you do so via Fusion. So that does nothing. If we resolve the Bone Party, there's some small potential. But this is assuming we're against just a plain old Appaloosa. The year is 2025, and you know how we can make Appaloosa with 3-4 materials right now? Any 2 effect monsters we can make Moon, and then go into full Fiendsmith combo to end on an Appaloosa, bro. You can just do this crap mid combo. So your only solution here is I opened Infinite Impermanence, and I'm going to well, assuming you didn't drop it already when your opponent was comboing, we'll imperm the Appaloosa because we top deck the Infinite Impermanence. Just a casual what was that? 3 in 34? No, or 3 in 35 actually, right? Yeah, casual 3 in 35 top deck. Yeah, I'm sure I can replicate that consistently. Yep. Great plan against the Appaloosa here. So, in terms of going first and going second, going first, you're okay. It's decent. Is it the best? Definitely not. In terms of the interruptions you set up and how strong your board is and how much different abuse you can tank, like board breakers, hand traps. Yeah, not that great. In terms of hand traps, yeah, there are a lot of issues with hand traps. Most notably, if you don't have Ash Blossom or Called By against Maxi specifically, it's a lot worse because of how your Memento effects resolve. If we are special summoning, with Anguish, for example, that's a special summon from the graveyard, which, the Charmy cards don't really get a draw off of that, so we can do that type of thing multiple times, we can summon Combine Creation, no draw, right? But both of these would give draws with all the other draws you would have given off of Maxi. You're special summoning a good amount of time. Yeah, that's not great, considering you die to a lot of different things. Not exactly the best. And that's not even considering right now what the endboard does against what your opponent sets up. So anti-synergy, and also your cards are kind of just poorly positioned. So the deck is just mid, unfortunately. It's not unplayable, it's not super good, it's not super bad, it's kind of somewhere in between. And that's just where the deck is. It's not like that you can't top events with Memento, I guess. I mean, you technically could, but is there something better that you could be playing? Yes, yes, there is. And I'm not just saying one deck. I mean, there's multiple decks that you could be playing that are a good bit better than this. So first off, consistency issue. Brick, everywhere, bricks. And the deck can produce pretty unplayable hands because you have just bricks all over the place. So we'll just finish off a quick list. So we'll go with, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Ash Blossom, Called By, and then we'll just throw in just whatever, really. More copies of Imperm. Shore. Back filler. I don't know. Anything else we need here? How many hand traps are we at here? 3, 6, 8. Guess a few more. I don't know. We'll do Maxi and then like 2 copies of Nib for fun. Not saying these are like the optimal hand traps to go for necessarily. I guess we could technically also put in like a Droll and Lockbird. But alright. Let's see. Is this hand playable? Going second, it's not playable. Going first, we're fine, you know? It'll do. So in terms of this hand, this is not normal summonable. This is not normal summonable. All of these cards do essentially nothing. Even if we get to resolve the Anguish, we don't have enough bodies, funnily enough, to summon the Combine Creation, and also summoning the Combine Creation by shuffling back entirely, like our entire hand, essentially, is awful. And this does nothing. It's just a 5k guy, really. But, you know, if the Grand Breakout resolves, we'll be fine, because, you know, I can do math, you can do math. Our opponent should be opening like 1 or 2 hand traps just in general. So if they just open a single imperm, we're fine. If they open like an Ash Blossom Joe Spring plus infinite impermanence, we're absolutely cooked. It's doomed. It just requires our opponent to have the brain cells to activate imperm and then Ash. Yeah, that's all it requires. And then what was this hand? We have absolutely no follow-up plays, right? Let's see what we top deck. Maxi, great. Assuming we don't get lethal next turn in this hypothetical, we're completely cooked. Either going first or going second. This hand's terrible. All right, next hand. This hand is completely saved by Called by the Grave, in my opinion, because I did say Tatsu is a 1-card combo, but you know what I neglected to mention is this is a 1-card combo that requires your normal summon unless we go ahead and quickly check the Sleepy line. What does that actually do for you again? Oh, right. Nothing. This is just another way you can go through the 1-card line. You still need a normal summon, right? You need to normal summon what you're adding with the Twin Dragon, or we can do what you're adding with Tatsu. So I believe with the Tatsu, it's like special summon itself, and then we should send Gaddock, Mace, and then Goblin. And then we have Gaddock special summon itself to add Mace, normal summon Mace, pop Mace to grab Fusion, and then you can go combo from there. So that's how this works, and I believe this can grab you the Bone Party, which allows you to go into Anguish later, and kind of cycle through the rest of your cards. So that's how that specific line works, from what I remember. So epic, I guess. This hand, just fine in general, you know, not much to complain about. If we get like Max Eat or something, we have Ash and Called by. If we get like hit by certain hand traps, we're also still fine because, you know, Called by, and we also have Bone Party, so we can tank some things. So for example, normal summon Darkblade, our opponent ashes us, we don't Called by that, we would just Bone Party this, because if our opponent has Maxi or a draw Molcharmy, we would rather Called by that or Ash that if necessary. It depends, I guess, but you know, that's how that sequence would go, like that kind of idea. And then here, normal summon Anguish. Okay. And then if we're against Blue Eyes specifically with Purge, well, there's a 50% chance this resolves. There is also like another 50% chance this resolves. So if we actually do the math, what are the odds of this actually resolving against Blue Eyes? I don't even really want to think about it. Well, all right. Then you have Imperm plus Ash Blossom Joe Spring for your next turn. Okay, but if we are going second here, this hand's fine because, you know, Infinite Impermanence, Ash Blossom, that might be able to stop something. Other previous hand, not that good going second, having only Ash Blossom. And then this hand, you know, it's acceptable. It gets the job done, you know. This is a 1-card combo. We can try resolve this. And because we have Mace in hand, yeah, this is where Fusion happens to shine. In some of the previous hands, it would not have shown at all. It would have been like making me feel like an abyss here, honestly. But all right, a decent hand you can play, and you have the max C counter with the Ash Blossom. We can probably let Molcharmy resolve, and we have like effect failure for next turn. So cool, fine. And this hand, here we go, absolutely terrible. We have one normal summon. This really has to resolve. or we're completely cooked. And we have Ash Blossom for follow-up. And now let's assume this is going second now. Okay, we have Ash Blossom. Hopefully that's enough to stop our opponent. That's coping really hard. And then, okay, the Dark Blade. If our Dark Blade gets negated by our opponent's anything, like a hand trap or something, like we'll draw one. Bad draw. It would be a hand trap in this case. So it doesn't have to be Nibiru. We could replace Nibiru with literally any hand trap, but okay. Now we're dealing with essentially, okay, if our opponent negates us or throws any interruption our way, like they could do Raigeki break on Darkblade and we would not be able to play. Just simple, plain and simple, right there. Keeping in mind that, Memento Link Fusion is something we can technically resolve if we get our cards destroyed. We still have to open the fusion and then like the other targets for fusion. But like, let's assume magically we will always have that target. Still just like a 30% chance to open the fusion, so not great. All right. Next hand. Terrible. We have Gaddock plus Goblin, so that's unplayable. So if I were to sequence this, I think we have to start with... Let me think about this. I think it's best to start Bone Party, honestly. And then we can try Normal Summon Goblin after, maybe. But I have to check Akihirin to see what tech says. If a Memento monster in your hand is destroyed okay, never mind. So we will Goblin first, I think. To send probably Akihirin. Worth considering, but Gaddock. We can't send Gaddock. No, this is terrible. No matter how you spin it. Yeah. So this would require our opponent to actually have hand knowledge for us. But if they magically did have hand knowledge, all you have to negate to really stop me here is just the Bone Party. If you Ash Bone Party, I literally cannot play. Because I have Gaddock in hand. This would require you to be like literally cheating, so not that bad. We can bait with Goblin, I guess, first, and then if Goblin does happen to successfully resolve, we can send Akihirin and then pop with Bone Party to summon Akihirin. I guess that's like the best thing we could do with the Goblin. We could also send like a fusion that, pop one of our cards to perform a search, which is like somewhat reasonable, I suppose. So still not that great. This, well, going second, not bad hand because lots of interruption. Going first, not as good because Normal Summon Darkblade gets hit by like Imperm. This gets ashed. We're kind of screwed. Yeah, funnily enough, that if we get Ghost Ogre, this also can't resolve, which people would be playing against like Blue Eyes as well because it's so popular, right? We need to destroy by the Memento effect, so if we have nothing to destroy here, this won't resolve. So yeah, not great. Going second though, this hand's actually pretty lit, unless our opponent has any hand trap, right, pretty much. Because we get hit by one interruption and one hand trap. In this case, it would be like Ash Blossom Dress Ring. Cooked. And technically, you know what? Goblin Biker Grand Breakout, even if this resolves, a second interruption or form of removal on the Goblin, yeah, we have no play. So, not great. And here's the kind of hand I was talking about. All right, Fusion. This can't resolve unless the Tatsu resolves. So if Tatsu does not resolve, nothing will. And now we have these hand traps, and we're really praying for like a good top deck. And this is not it. If we activate, I guess we might not activate Effect Veiler if we're playing around like triple tactics. So we have the one last Hail Mary of if we get like interrupted, we can tribute the Effect Veiler for Goblin. And then hope that this and this, neither of these get negated. Because if they do, we have no further plays and we just lose the game. That's how a lot of these hands work, right? And then this hand, ooh, that's pretty terrible. Well, good news is there's some synergy between these three cards. We can normal summon this, we can special summon this, and we can play through like some hand traps here, but we have no hand traps. And also we have no insulation against hand traps, so we get Max Seed, we get Multi-Charmed. We're not feeling too happy about that in this situation. If we're going second with this hand, bro, we're going to get bent over backwards like it's not even funny, bro. Yeah. I can name a lot of different endboards that bend us over backwards. And yeah, I wouldn't even consider it a win if we were able to win with this hand going against a crazy endboard, because that would just mean our opponent misplayed, and it didn't mean we played correctly. It just means we would have gotten lucky. Like if I play in bronze and no one has read my cards before, you know, then I don't really consider that a win. So yeah. After going through some hands, we can clearly see simply deck is mid. So here we have one normal summon. We can choose between either the Anguish or the Goblin, and then we have the Bone Party to resolve. So once again, Imperm Ash kills this hand. Or perhaps Effect Veil or Purge. Or perhaps a Maxi would be also suffering. And there's no real good play we have here. Not really, right? So that was a showcase of why, in fact, the deck is mid. Not unplayable, but definitely mid. And if we remove all the support, it actually will get more consistent, believe it or not. Specifically the Memento support. So we just remove the two cards that are support in the main deck. Kieran mostly is going to be allowing us to be a little bit better off in the grind game, which do we need that necessarily? No. Yeah. Kieran, not that great, honestly. And then Sleepy, this allows us to make on the same turn Twin Dragon and also the Creation King, which if we don't play, we won't be able to do that, but we can still just keep the Creation King in our just deck in general. And we can technically also make Creation King on second turn with like a Fusion instead of a Guardian Chimera. We technically have that option, so like the amount of interruptions might lower, but do you guys actually know the amount of interruptions this deck actually puts up? It's actually a dumbass amount. If you throw in Cranium Burst, dumbass amount still. And any Sleepy defenders, come on, you could play technically, if you want to think of it this way, we could also play technically one of Sleepy, or we can play one of Cranium Burst, and they're both equally as useful. Like, might as well, right? They're both one-ofs, and they're not like necessarily the best to open for a variety of reasons, because you know, if for example we have Anguish Sleepy, if Anguish is negated, you can't resolve Sleepy, right? So yeah, Sleepy in hand, kind of terrible. So yeah, we have a lot of cards we would rather search than see. A lot of things we would not want to see in hand for that kind of reason, like Foolish Burial. We might want Foolish this. Might want to search this off of the Creation King. It's like okay to open, I guess, because you can just send a different card, but still not the best. And with Memento free support, it's much more valid to run these traps like the Fracture Dance and Cranium Burst, because you actually have a lot of spell trap searches. So we have one search, and then this is a search as well. So 1, 2, and then Fusion also searches. So if we open any of these, essentially, if we open either the Bone Party or Fusion, we would do essentially, let's assume we open Bone Party, then we would search probably Fusion, and then what? Fusion? So if we search Fusion twice, you want me to search Bone Party for my third card instead of like a Cranium Burst? Like, come on, that's insane. You must be sick in that. We can afford to run one Cranium Burst just to have the search target, right? Instead of searching for a follow-up on like turn 3 on the first turn. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and hopefully this has been at least a little bit insightful. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.